So you mentioned the Tanzimat era. Can you elaborate on what that is?
So there are two edicts, 1839 and 1856, where the Ottomans proclaimed that they're going to modernize their state. Among them, it's talking about the first one. I mean, a lot of people said this first was under European pressure, but now we know that the Sultan Abdul Majid was very sincere about creating a just system of taxes, of basically obligation rights, and that the state has a role in transforming the empire to something modern. By 1856, it's now, in terms vis-a-vis the non-Muslims, this idea that equality is going to happen completely. And that's when you have the first constitution in the 1880s that's suspended very quickly. It offsets everything in the terms of equality. You have the 1908 revolution, that is the Young Turks. And the Young Turks basically are joined by Jews, Armenians, and Greeks as sort of a hope for change. Now, this Young Turk branch takes a swing during World War I, and that's where we see the empire really unravel with the Armenian massacres, later on full genocide. And you have also, it was just Armenians that was massacred, of a lot of different Christian groups. And the Jews at this time in the Ottoman Empire are integrating in it. By this time, Palestine, something else has happened. Palestine is lost, and it's a Balfour Declaration. But if we could talk about this window of time, more importantly than Tanzimat, is this era and then Ottoman Palestine. And we bring it back to Palestine. In Palestine, for the first time, the Jewish community sees itself as able to integrate into the Ottoman Empire at large. And this is a part that is missed out of history. So if we talk about, I'm writing a new piece, probably a book, and I'm talking about the erasure of history. So what I talk about in my first book is that the Zionist narrative goes way too smoothly. First Aliyah, major immigration, 1881. The founders of the state, Ben Gurion and friends, second Aliyah, 1904. And then you go 1917 Balfour Declaration, British Mandate. And finally, you have the 47 Partition Plan, right? It's a very smooth narrative. But if we look at it from 1914, no one would ever have imagined that 1948 would ever appear the way it did, right? That no one could imagine a Jewish state looking as, that if you go back in that era, you say, what would a Jewish state look like? Well, a lot of us can imagine there would be high tech and 1,000 other things, right? Not in the Jewish state, in the world in general, right? Different, who could imagine there's gonna be telephones? Well, some did actually, right? Some did imagine TVs. Some did imagine. But overall, theoretically, what a state is going to look like is going to be very hard, and it's beyond there. Now we have two tracks here. We have one track of Theodor Herzl, who is an international Zionist, right? And that Theodor Herzl is inherently against Jewish immigration to Palestine because it's going to hinder his attempts to get a international deal for a Jewish homeland, which is given finally in 1903. Uganda is offered to the Jews through British colonialism, not Uganda, but now we say East Africa Holdings. And we know that the Zionist organization voted down. Herzl dies a year later, right, in 1904. So 1904 is going to be a crucial year. Up until 1904, from the 1880s to 1904, the majority of Jews coming to Palestine, even if they define themselves later on as Zionists, never see an independent state as their ultimate goal. This does not exist. And for the most part, They're Hebrewizing already from the 1850s. You have secular education entering the Jewish schools. You have Hebrew on the curriculum. So yes, later on from the first Aliyah, you have Eliezer ben Yehuda, who comes, and he's sort of later on memorial. Even in his life, he's known as this sort of crazy person that, you know, he opens the newspaper up, he speaks Hebrew to his kids, he teaches other people in the Yeshuv in Hebrew. But that doesn't mean they didn't know Hebrew before. What connected all the communities in Palestine, whether they're Algerian Moroccan community, whether they're the Ashkenazi community, whether they're the Syrian community, when people came to Jerusalem by the early 1900s, they are now communicating in Hebrew, and they're now adopting Hebrew as their main language. So what I'm trying to get at is we know so little, and this is the headline here. You know, the headline, the important thing about all this, you know, if we, you know, all this huge amount of information I'm giving you now, the headline is we do not know the history of the Jewish community in Palestine before 1914, because a very ideological history has been written in and erased exactly what was happening, erased the multiplicity of Jews in Palestine that saw themselves as, on one hand, Zionists in the terms of creating a local Jewish Hebrew culture, but not seeing an independent state as an end goal. And they're able to influence the Jewish organization, what would become the World Zionist Organization, the Zionist Organization, which will become the WZO. By 1910 and 1911, the World Zionist Organization is saying, we do not want an independent state. We want to integrate into the Ottoman Empire and receive a sort of autonomy. Okay? Even the Zionist Organization is forfeiting this idea of an independent Jewish state. They don't see it's possible. They don't see it possible. And only in 1919 do we start hearing words like first Aliyah, second Aliyah. The idea is, and the headline here is, that we really know very little about it. But what do we know about it also? We know two things concerning Palestinians. Palestinians during this era become very suspicious of any type of Zionism, which you don't find in the Ottoman, in Istanbul. They're arguing. Some are saying Zionism is good, some saying it's bad. Some saying Jewish migration is not Zionist and they're able to come. Abdul Hamid said he's against it, but he allowed Jews were able to come in for numerous reasons throughout the time. They were not expelled, okay, through capitulations, other things, but there's no really major shift with the Young Turk era vis-a-vis Zionism. The only shift is that people are talking about it. And the debate over Zionism in Istanbul, I'm going to confuse matters, is actually over we want Jews or we don't want Jews, and there's a very anti-Semitic undertone to it. In Palestine, there's not an anti-Semitic undertone to it. They see Jewish migration as a threat from the 1880s, 1890s already. They see that there is going to be a convergence between that Herzlian Zionism and what's happening in Palestine, right? They get that connection. They get that connection. So this is the dynamic. The dynamic is, to sum this part up, connected to Tanzimat, is that it's actually through the opening up of a more liberal system, or a system that allowed a greater room for new identities to emerge, okay, that it was, in a sense, pushed onto the Ottomans for other reasons, nothing to do with Palestine. Palestine is considered the almost, I mean, Jerusalem has a special connection with Istanbul, but Palestine is less on the radar of many people in the Ottomans. So it's this room for new identities to emerge where you see rising tensions among the Jewish community and the Palestinian community. And that's why in my book, I say Jews and Palestinians claiming the homeland, right? 1914, I don't have the title right here, but I don't have my book around here. I usually bring it up and show it. But that's where I call them Jews, because I do not call them Palestinians. Because after 1920, there's a sense that there were Palestinian Jews. There's a lot of people that say there were Palestinian Jews, and Zionism came and, you know, pushed that identity on them later on. And there were, you know, Jews, Arabs, and Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Christians all defined themselves as Palestinians. No, Christians and Muslims did. Jews, very rarely, if any time, have I seen them call themselves or even express a love of Palestine, and not Eretz Israel, right? The land of Israel.